And if you could please put your first and last name and your chapter in the chat for us to take attendance, that would be awesome. So welcome everyone. Happy Wednesday. Hope everyone's having a great Wednesday, having a great start to your August. Welcome to our last session of Amplify DU recruitment training program. Appreciate you all for being here tonight, and hopefully you're getting excited as we look ahead in the next couple weeks for the fall semester. I know growth team is excited. We got the guys hitting the road here in the next couple weeks, both for expansion efforts as well as some recruitment support efforts and associate chapter efforts, and just overall helping the fraternity grow. And so hopefully you all are looking forward to that as well. For our last session tonight, we've obviously spent the first four sessions really talking about recruitment, talking about how our philosophy is within DU, how that affects your philosophy as a chapter. We've obviously talked about those myths within recruitment and how are we actually addressing those and what are actually true, but really more so what's not true, and what's the actual truth behind that, and how do we approach those different kind of barriers or myths that we hear about within recruitment or that you may be thinking about or your chapter members might be talking to you about. Talking about how do we plan for recruitment, how do we make sure that our plan is solid and strategic and intentional and something that's very focused on completing the goals that we've set for ourselves and being successful in that. And then obviously last week talking about how do we train our members, right? So we as a VP of recruitment, a recruitment committee, an alumni or advisor, having a lot of conversations, but how are we then making sure that our members are well trained so that we collectively as a group can move forward? And tonight is, in my opinion, probably the most important piece to the entire thing is actually going out and executing this said plan. It's executing the philosophy, it's executing the training, it's executing pushing through the barriers, and ultimately it's doing what you need to do to be successful. And so one thing that I always like to share, especially in Amplify, is this quote, right? Execution is everything until you execute, it's all just talk, right? You can have the perfect plan. You can have the most conversations with the growth team member. You can have weekly meetings with your recruitment team. You can talk to your alumni advisor every other day. But that in and of itself is not good enough, right? Just having a plan on paper, just having that conversation, just asking those questions and having that discourse and having that conversation is awesome. But at the end of the day, if you don't go out and execute, if you don't go out and win every single day when it comes to recruitment, when you don't go out and make yourself 1% better every day with recruitment, it's all just talk, right? And so tonight's really about how are we going out and actually putting our plan into action? How are we executing properly? And what are the things that we need to be focused on and thinking about to ensure that there's proper execution? Right. As you all know, right, I coach high school basketball and I talk with my players a lot about this is, man, we could spend every single day in practice getting better, which we should be doing and you should be doing when it comes to being a chapter member and somebody who's in charge of recruitment. We can talk about what our strategy is and what our plan is going into the next game, right? What type of defense are we running? Where's our offensive sets going to look like, right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, if they don't go out and execute, and if I as a coach don't go and execute that game plan within my roles and responsibilities, then it's all just talk, right? It's all just we spent a lot of the time getting better, which is always good, but we didn't go out and actually execute when everything actually mattered. And so, really going to talk about those pieces and what makes you all be successful when it comes to taking our philosophy, taking our plans, taking our training, and going from there. So, four different things that we'll cover when we think about executing the plan. We'll talk about being consistent, but being flexible. We'll talk about how do we keep our chapter advisors, our chapter IHQ growth team members, other folks updated. How do we celebrate the wins? And how do we remember that last year was last year, right? And what do all of these things mean? And why are all these things important to executing the plan, right? And why are these things that if we focus on these four areas, why are these areas that are going to allow for us to be the most confident in our success moving forward? So we'll dig a little bit more into those pieces tonight. Obviously, would love questions throughout or conversations throughout. I know my team and Nan, Axel, and Chase might be hopping in throughout the webinar tonight and kind of talking from their perspective and their expertise as members of the growth team. They'll be sharing some stuff in the chat as well, because ultimately at the end of the day, we want to make sure you guys feel the most comfortable in how we execute this plan moving forward. So first one is this idea is that we have to be consistent but flexible. So what does that mean, right? And I think any team that properly executes the plan to the level that they need to has these two things. They're consistent, but they're also flexible in what that looks like, right? And so first bullet point is like keep that plan top of mind, but also acknowledge the potential need for change, right? And so we have to keep the plan top of mind. We have to be consistent in how we are going about our recruitment. We can't be overly disorganized. We can't be like, well, we're doing this one day and we're just going to kind of completely change it the next day and then we're going to do 180 the next day. Like that's just that inconsistency is not going to be there, right? Or we're going to be really on for 10 days or 2 weeks of just like hitting the ground hard with outreach, hitting the ground hard with meetings, hitting the ground hard with social media, and then we're going to take 10 days off, right? And we're not really going to focus on recruitment. We can't have that inconsistency. And so recruitment and your recruitment plan needs to be top of mind every single day between now and when we reach our goals, right? And that really helps when we have this 365 philosophy because it's allowing for us to think about recruitment every single day. However, we also need to acknowledge the potential need for change, right? We can't predict the future. I wish we could, but there are going to be things that you have in your plan that are just going to be needing change, or we're going to have to reimagine or reiterate or rethink what they look like. And so that's where that flexibility comes into play, right? And so that's where good teams, good recruitment chapters are understanding that there's going to be that need for change, right? And I'll tell you a quick story. Maybe I've shared this. I know I've shared this with some chapters, but when I was vice president of recruitment during my undergraduate time, we had a plan and we were consistent in it. We wanted something every single day for 2 weeks. We were new on campus. We wanted to make sure we provided enough opportunity for potential new members to come see us, to come meet us, do all those things that we've talked about. But 3 days into recruitment, one of my recruitment chairs named Bhavin, and Bhavin was one of my best friends. He came to me and said, Hayden, like, guys are starting to get burned out a little bit. They're starting to think about the next 10 days and just how much recruitment that we're thinking about. Can we change or can we be flexible in what our schedule looks like? Can we remove or kind of switch up or change some of our recruitment ideas? Can we move some things around? Can we make some things more one-on-one based or small group based rather than the entire chapter? And because us as a recruitment team and us as a chapter talked about, yeah, we know we're going to need some change, that was an easy conversation for him to approach me with and for us to have and for us to make that change. And so the change we made was we said, okay, great, no more Friday events, right? And we're going to change Fridays to what we called lunches with P&Ms, right? And so we took our high priority P&Ms out to lunch. We found our small group of best recruiters. We said, great, here are the guys that we want you to take out to lunch. We will build it into the recruitment budget that we have, right? That will be our line. That will just be another line item or another expense, all within our total budget. And with those high priority P&Ms, you are going to now take them to lunch or dinner on Friday, and your goal is to get them to the next level, which in a lot of cases was either extend them a bid or get that closure on a bid if they have one, right? And so that was a way for us to address the change that we need when it came to member engagement and member burnout from, taking away a chapter recruitment event, but not necessarily taking away the event as a whole, being consistent in that we still needed to recruit, but how we recruited on those days just looked different. What also helped with that was we met with and had communication with the recruitment team daily, right? We've hit August. We know recruitment's coming up, right? Over the summer, it might look like we're communicating weekly, but maybe not daily. But this is where there needs to be daily communication with the recruitment team to make sure that we are on top of everything that we need to do, right? And so that might look like just, daily, hey, how's everyone doing? Are there any concerns, any issues? What's everyone focused on? And that might be through your WhatsApp or your GroupMe or your text chain. And then once we get into kind of that formal or primary IFC recruitment that we talk about, you're meeting with your recruitment team daily. Hey, it's a 15-minute check-in, it's a 30-minute check-in. Hey, we're going to meet 45 minutes before the recruitment event, and then we're going to stay 30 minutes after, right? And we're going to talk about how's the plan working? Where are we at with our benchmarks? How are we ensuring that we're meeting our goals? Did we have enough P&Ms? Which P&Ms weren't there that we need to follow up with? Which P&Ms need bids, right? Again, that's being consistent in that, and it's allowing for the recruitment team to say, are we executing to the plan to the level that we need to, instead of saying, hey, we meet with the recruitment team weekly, but on Monday we should have met about something that's going to affect us on Thursday, but because we don't meet until Friday, we were never able to address it and something fell through, or these P&Ms never got followed up with, and now those P&Ms are long gone, or they're interested in somewhere else because we didn't have those daily communication or touch points as a recruitment team. And so that's also the consistency piece on that as well. Obviously, you can be flexible in your communication and when you meet and where you meet and all of those pieces, but be consistent as we get closer to recruitment in having consistent communication and meetings with your recruitment team. Maybe it's, including your advisor, including your alumni. Just make sure that the folks that are there that are most ingrained and in charge of recruitment have those daily meetings and communication pieces. And then the last one is make the halftime adjustments, right? So make the adjustments that you would go into halftime with. If you've been on a sports team, right, and say, hey, some things just aren't working. Some things are working better than we thought. How do we make those adjustments? How do we be flexible in that? We have to have an honest assessment, right? It's okay to say, hey, we thought that these things that we were supposed to be doing, or this sort of outreach, or the way that we're following up was going to be great, and it's just not happening, right? Or I thought Axel was going to be the best person to have the follow up with these 10 PNMs, and maybe our honest assessment was maybe we need to have Chase do that, right? And so we need to make some of those halftime adjustments. Or maybe we thought having X event at this time and this date is going to lead to something that's going to be bigger, more engagement, whatever the case may be. And maybe the adjustment is we've got to switch up what that event is next week. It's a similar event, but we've got to just make that adjustment, right? And again, we have to have that honest assessment. We can't sugarcoat anything because it's not going to allow for us to be flexible, and it's not going to allow for us to make those adjustments that are needed that are going to ultimately be the reason why we are successful in recruitment, right? So it's like if I don't adjust my defense or if I don't adjust my offense and we just continue to do the same thing and think it's going to work when clearly it didn't in the first half, then we're most likely probably not going to win the game in the second half, right? And so you have to take that mindset into recruitment and have that honest assessment and make what I would call those halftime adjustments. And that doesn't necessarily mean, okay, halfway through recruitment, we need to have a full assessment. That literally is every single day we need to have an honest assessment on where we're at with recruitment. How are we executing the plan properly? Are the right people in the conversations? What questions do we need to ask? What concerns do we have? What red flags do we need to talk about and maybe follow up with a growth team member, myself, Chase, Axel, Nam, a member of, another member on the IHQ staff? Do we need to follow up with IFC, our alumni or advisors? Like those are the type of things that we need to be thinking about daily. And again, making those adjustments to ensure that we're executing the plan properly. So the next area would be we have to properly keep our chapters, advisors, etc. updated. This is huge when we think about executing the plan because this allows for us to be held accountable. It also allows for you all to know and have an honest conversation about where you're at and what those individuals can do to help you continue to execute the plan at the level that it needs to be executed at. If we just keep the information to ourselves, to the recruitment committee, our chapter might get a little apathetic because they don't really know what's going on. Our advisors and alumni might say, "Hey, like let me know how I can help," but because they don't truly know what's happening, they don't really know how to help, so they might take a step back or they try to overcorrect and be too involved when in reality that might hinder your recruitment success, right? But if we honestly keep the chapter advisors and others updated throughout the entire process, then we are going to see a higher likelihood of executing the plan at the level that we need to. So share updates on events, P&M progress, needs, right? Tell the chapter, hey, here's where we're at with our P&Ms list. Here's where we're behind. Here's where we're ahead. Here's how many guys have bids. Here's how many guys have accepted bids. Here's how many guys we want to extend bids to, right? Here was our last event, with your advisor or advisors or alumni. Here's our last 3 events. Here's, the result of it. Here's the follow-up that we're doing. Here are the action items that we have. Here are the P&Ms that maybe we want to have get in front of you as alumni or advisors because they've expressed an interest to make that connection. That needs to be happening constantly. So having those email, having those phone call updates, again, it goes back to being consistent in your follow-up with your recruitment team and your advisors, making sure that you are updating everyone who's involved in the success of the plan and recruitment. They need to know what's going on. With that, we have to ask for feedback. We have to ask for advice. We have to ask for guidance, right? Again, I think this goes back to when we talk about training members, and even planning for recruitment. We need to be open to getting that advice, to getting that feedback, and getting that guidance. If we're closed-minded and just say, here's the update, but I'm not really concerned about changing things. I don't really want to hear what you have to say, or maybe I'll listen to what you have to say, but I'm really not going to do anything about it. You're not going to execute the plan to the level that you need to. You're not going to be able to make those halftime adjustments. So you need to listen. You need to take that advice. You need to take that feedback from your advisors, from your alumni, from us as growth team members, from members of the chapter, and you need to take their guidance, right? There's very smart people that you should be surrounding yourself with. There's very different perspectives that can be really helpful. Again, we talked about this earlier this summer where it's like, hey, if there's only four members of the recruitment team and we've been meeting all summer, right? Some perspective gets lost. And so we need to make sure we're bringing in others. And when we keep the chapter and advisors and the growth team updated on our progress, we're going to be able to find that advice and that feedback and that guidance. And you should be asking for it. Hey, what should we be doing? What are we missing? How can we move forward? Are there things that you think we should adjust or should try or should take out, and then have a conversation about that and then make the best decision moving forward? And then I think this is a big one because I think it gets lost in a lot of times when I work with chapters is I think it's been pretty clear that you have a lot of resources at your disposal, whether it's your alumni advisors, whether it's us as growth team members, your campus staff, whoever it is, right? You need to make sure that you know that you are not isolated to just the chapter. Communicate how alumni and advisors can be involved. Share your concerns or red flags and do this early, right? The only way that your alumni or advisors can help you, the only way that us as growth team members can help you and help you address concerns and red flags is if you do it early so that we can step in and intervene so that down the line you don't finish primary recruitment or you don't get to October 15th and you're saying, well, yeah, like there was some major concerns back in August. We just didn't really share them with you. We told you everything was going to be okay, or that we had it taken care of. We can't help you on October 15th if primary recruitment was September 1st, right? We can help you adjust for the spring. We can help you adjust for maybe some continuous open bidding, but we can't help you if we don't know ahead of time. And again, advisors and alumni also need to know what's going to make your life easier within recruitment. Is it alumni panel, showing up to different events? Is it reaching out to certain potential new members who might want to talk to an alumni or advisor? Is it providing more information about the chapter house and the living requirement, or the finances, or the scholarship program that the chapter offers? Is it, hey, we need you to be involved. We're getting a lot of questions from parents. Are you okay to be somebody that the parent can call or reach out to so they hear from another adult, right? So you need to communicate that to advisors and alumni. I know advisors and alumni, especially those that are on the call, are probably reaching out and saying, how can we be involved in this? What is your plan? How can we provide advice and feedback and guidance? But you as members and you as VPs, exec board members, recruitment committee members also need to be proactive in this. But ultimately, and I think this last part I want to stress is, and you need to share and communicate those concerns and those red flags so that we know how to intervene, when to intervene, and help you all through the process. So don't feel like you're isolated. Use those resources that we talked about last week and allow for us to help you and be a team so that we can best execute the plan moving forward. So, third area would be to celebrate the wins. And I'm a huge believer in this. No matter how big or small, celebrate the wins. It keeps the momentum going. For those who are LI, a couple weeks ago, our VP of recruitment from Purdue, Marco, talked a little bit about this. Like, we need to celebrate if we had a really good event, if somebody accepted a bid, if, if one of our members had this awesome conversation with this guy in class today who, said, I'm interested in DU, and he's going to bring him and his three buddies to the next event. Like, that's a win that we need to celebrate, right? You also need to celebrate the large ones. Hey, we just got 10 guys to accept over the course of the last week. That's huge. Just as big as we just got two guys who were on the fence the entire time to officially accept their bid. Like, we have to keep the momentum going. I think a lot of the times chapters will get in the mindset of like things aren't going well, that event wasn't great. this one guy said no, and sometimes we've just got to flip that mindset. And while those things need to be addressed, we also need to not just dwell on them the entire time, and we've got to celebrate what's worked, right? Just because the game's not going the way that I want it to go doesn't mean that there are areas and successes and wins that we've seen that we can continue to work on and continue to think about how do we allow for continue to think about how do we capitalize on those moving forward. And I think the same thing goes for recruitment. Highlight chapter members and their contributions throughout recruitment. So again, Marco talked about this at LI a couple weeks ago, and Purdue doing it like at the end of the night or at the end of the event or at a chapter meeting. Highlight who are the chapter members that have made a huge impact this past week at an event or with recruitment. What were those contributions, right? Why did that push recruitment forward? How did that help execute our strategy and our plan to be successful in recruitment? When we highlight those members, it makes the member feel engaged, it makes the member feel seen, it allows for them to say, yeah, I'm doing a really good job, and what I'm doing actually is working and being seen, and we need more of that. And allows for other members to also say, great, like maybe I should do more of what he's doing, or maybe I want to be the person who gets highlighted at the end of an event or in a chapter meeting and get that kudos or get that DU of the week, right? Or as the duck of the week, whatever the case is, we need to be able to celebrate that and highlight that. And I think that that's a huge part to executing the plan because when we feel that sense of things are working, when we're celebrating our wins or celebrating our good pieces, guys are more engaged. They are thinking about how are we executing at a higher level, and they don't create this apathy or this lack of member engagement that sometimes we see because we're just overly negative. People don't want to be in a negative space. They want to be in positive spaces while also addressing areas of improvement. And then the last one, like at the end of every meeting and share, you're sharing the positives, right? Even if it's one or two. Some meetings it might be like six, seven, eight. Here are the six, seven, eight positives that we have. Some meetings it's going to be two or three, right? That just is what it is. Every meeting or event I should put in there as well. We need to share our positives. We also need to share how those positives relate back to the plan, right? So if, Axel shares, hey, we just got X amount of engagement on our most recent post on Instagram, right? That's a huge positive, right? Because that means more people are seeing our post, more people are liking it, more people are commenting, whatever the case may be. Like that needs to be shared. And that's part of executing our plan because we want to be on social media, right? Hey, maybe a positive is we extended five more bids than we wanted to at our benchmark point versus what we had in our plan that we submitted or that we have for recruitment. That's a huge positive, right? That means we're ahead of our benchmark. That means we're finding the right P&Ms that we want to give bids to. Great. That's a huge positive. Now, next week, hopefully the positive is 100% of those guys, all five out of five, said yes, right? And so then we're able to then build off of those positive pieces, and we're obviously able to end the meeting on a high note rather than the negative note of like, hey, we just got to do better, guys. Like that just didn't work for us. Bad event, right? Yes, we can say, hey, there's a lot of things we need to work on, but what are some of the key pieces that we can highlight that maybe we need to continue to keep that momentum going and highlight those pieces while also acknowledging those areas of improvement. And again, I think this is huge when we think about the mindset and we think about how it relates to executing that plan and allows for us to celebrate those big wins and those small wins and allows for that momentum to be strong moving forward. And then the last piece that I think is really important when we think about executing the plan is like we have to remember last year was last year. I think a lot of chapters do a good job about this. But that's in the past, right? We want to build off of that foundation if it was really successful. We want to improve off of that last year if it wasn't, right? And so you always have to remember that like in this plan and what's happening is 26, 27 is a brand new year with new opportunity for chapter growth. And when we think about it that way, it gives us a better mindset to think, okay, here's the plan that I strategically and intentionally created, that I worked with the growth team, my recruitment committee, my alumni advisors to refine, right? That I know is going to be changing, right? But I also know there are pieces in there that we may have done last year, but this year's a new year to figure that out, right? And maybe there's pieces in there that we didn't do last year and say, great, again, it's another opportunity for us to grow as a chapter with these new pieces in place that we want to go out and execute. And so remember that because I think sometimes chapters go, well, we've seen this before. This is what happened last year. And then they just kind of get in that rut and they can't get themselves out of it. The chapters who go, last year was last year. This is a brand new year. It's a new opportunity. It's a new way for us to grow. We've got a more strategic plan, more intentional plan. We're committed to executing it at a high level. We're committed to celebrating the wins, keeping the right people engaged, not feeling like we're out here on an island, but we're utilizing our resources. We're going to be consistent in this, but also understanding that it's flexible. Man, like we can go in and kill it with growth and recruitment because it's a new year, and what happened last year, right? Um, we also have to remember that last year, again, was last year, and we have to get 1% better every single day. And maybe we're building off of that from last year. But every single day, we have to get at least 1% better. And those 1% are going to start adding up. They're going to start stacking. And all of a sudden, you're going to feel, man, we're executing at a high level. We're making good decisions. We're finding more P&Ms. We're doing what we need to, and we're being consistent in that process, right? And that's huge when we think about executing that plan, executing that strategy, and allowing for us to be successful in that. And lastly, because I think this is really important for some groups, I've had some conversations with chapters. We can't be complacent if last year was a success, and we can't be overly negative if last year was not successful. So, what do I mean by that? There are chapters, and you may be sitting out there and you say, man, last year we killed it in recruitment, right? We recruited 30 guys over the course of the year, highest recruitment the chapter's seen in the last 5 years, whatever the case is. Everything's working. We're just going to, take the same plan we had last year, put it into place this year. We don't necessarily need to put enough or a lot of attention to it because guys will just now come to us because we were able to be successful and clearly that plan works. That's the complacency you don't want to have if you saw success last year, right? What you should be saying is, great, that's our new benchmark. That's our new foundation. Now, how do we go turn 30 into 35, right? How do we turn 30 into 40? How do we continue to push ourselves with that foundation, knowing that, okay, over the course of the last 5 years, maybe the chapter never thought they were going to be able to recruit 30 in 1 year. Well, now we did. Now that's the new benchmark, new foundation. How do we push ourselves for more? What do we need to go refine in our plan? How do we better execute? Did we execute at the level we needed to? And if we did, how did we do that? How do we replicate it? And what are the things that we need to tweak? So don't become complacent because complacency will lead to 31 year and 15 the next year, right? I've seen it, right? And so we need to be able to not be complacent specifically if we were successful last year, or maybe we were successful the last 2 years. And on the flip side, we can't be overly negative if last year was not successful, right? And we see this with chapters as well. They had a down year for whatever reason. Maybe it's because they didn't execute at a high level. Maybe because they didn't have the right person or peoples in place to allow for them to have the right strategy. Maybe there was something that happened on campus, whatever the case is, right? We can't be overly negative if we say, hey, you know, last year didn't work. Whatever plan I create just isn't going to work as well. The guys just don't want this to be a thing. There's no way on our campus we can go recruit 15 guys. We're only able to recruit 6 guys because that's what we did last year. So we're not necessarily going to push ourselves, whatever the case is. Like we can't be in that mindset because we're in that mindset. No matter how good your plan is, no matter how well you want to execute it, if you have that negative mindset because last year or the year before, um, then you're probably not going to be as successful as you could be, right? You're not going to be committed and consistent to the plan. You're not going to be flexible with the plan, right? You're just going to allow for something to happen and just kind of throw your hands in the air. And I'm just being honest, right? So we have to be able to say, yes, last year happened. It wasn't where we wanted to be. We've made a commitment as a chapter to be better with recruitment. We are going to challenge and push ourselves at to another level, right? We're not necessarily going to be unrealistic in that. We're going to work with the right people. That's either headquarters staff, that's our alumni or advisors, that's maybe somebody on campus. And we are going to make sure that while last year wasn't great, we aren't going to let that seep into this year, right? We're going to say, here's what we can do to change it. Here's how we are going to implement new things. Here's how we are going to improve. And then taking all of that information and taking all of that energy and saying, here's how we're going to execute, right? And I've seen it be successful with chapters who've had a down year and they've just changed their mindset. And they said, great, last year was last year. It sucked. We didn't like it. We don't want to be there again. And we want to make sure that we are growing in the correct way. And they changed a lot of things and they worked with the right people, whether it was our team, whether it was their alumni or advisors or somebody else, to make that happen. But I've also seen it on the flip side where chapters do become overly negative, and I can validate and feel for them, right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, they just didn't get past the fact that last year happened, and they couldn't look ahead and couldn't figure out how to adjust things and make those improvements, right? And so we don't want to be in that space. And obviously, with a lot of you just being on Amplify, a lot of you connecting with our team, a lot of you being at LI and in those sessions, I'm confident that you're not in that space, right? But I want to be very clear that in order for us to execute, in order for us to be at a high level this upcoming year, we can't be overly negative and we can't be too complacent. So, with that being said, again, remember last year was last year. Remember to celebrate the wins. Remember to keep chapters advisors updated. Remember to be consistent but flexible throughout the entirety of this. And ultimately, if you do those four things, plus a lot of other things that we've talked about so far. We train our members correctly. We continue to have member involvement. We continue to do all these other pieces. We reach out to P&Ms. We get the right people on our names list. We get on social media. We follow up correctly, right? All the things that are in your plan, that is going to lead you to the highest likelihood that you are going to execute your plan at the level that you need to. So, with that being said, I'll turn it over to questions. I would love to hear Chase, Axel, or Nam if you have any thoughts and kind of your work with chapters when it comes to recruitment and growth or your experience. But do want to leave some space for any questions before we take off with some reminders and then have you all go enjoy the rest of your evening. All right. So,
Hi, Hayden. How are you?
good.
This is great to hear. One important thing for my chapter in our recruitment at my school at Georgia Tech, we get a lot of recruits from tabling, and at tabling, all fraternities we have 33 fraternities. They all have their flags out in front of their table, but nobody can recognize our flag.
Hmm.
Is there a workaround that I mean, we've seen flags on like online that we would love to order, but they're really expensive if they have two distinct letters instead of
Hmm.
our insignia.
Hmm.
Is there any way, like, I don't know if International has any sort of resources or like materials that could help us in our recruitment? Do you have any insight on that? I don't know where you're based or if you're like physically in international storage closets or whatnot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. We can get you connected with our comms team. I think they're always a good step or a good place to start. They do a lot for our expansion team in kind of creating swag and materials and kind of where are some kind of cost-effective materials or kind of swag items that can help chapters when it comes to tabling or whatever the case might be. So if you want to go ahead and privately message myself, Chase, Axel, or Nam here just with your contact information, we can get you connected with them. I think the other thing with tabling, and this is huge, when you are tabling, I care about what your table looks like, obviously, but I care more about how you are being proactive in that process, right? What are you doing to go out and find the guys and bring them to the table? Have you practiced? How we're bringing guys to the table, what we're talking about, how we're then getting phone numbers instead of just sitting back and hopefully they're going to approach us based off the flag that's in front of the table, right? So I think there's a both and there. Like we, of course, can help and have a conversation of like what kind of materials or things that we can help you find at a maybe cost effective piece there. But also, right, thinking about how are we actually approaching tabling. Like I could go out with nothing on a table and go probably bring in 40, 50 guys just because I'm being active and maybe I've got just my phone number or I've got a couple DU flyers, right? I'm not going to necessarily be effective if I'm sitting behind the table. And so we can also talk about that. So I think that's also a key part in tabling, especially with like a Meet the Greeks or an IFC event. Like we have to be proactively bringing guys to our table. But of course, we can then also talk about how we present ourselves with that tabling. So let's get you connected with our comms team. Send us a message in the chat, and we can go ahead and get you connected with those pieces there.
Thank you so much, Aiden.
Yeah.
Uh, Hayden, if I may, I want to talk about our associate chapters and
Yeah.
younger chapters. I see Virginia Tech is here tonight. That's awesome. I so my name is Chase Johnson. I assist our associate chapters here, and a common thing I hear from younger chapters like that are, we're so new and we're so small. It's hard to recruit. We don't really have a story to tell or history, and I get that and I hear that. But what I want to say here is when you're working towards a charter, or if your group is small, or perhaps even if Greek life isn't a big thing on your campus, you get to tell your own story there. Especially for our associate chapters, you're building that history and those traditions, and that could be a huge incentive for guys who want to start something new, or perhaps get a leadership position, right? And so I think just being creative and being yourself, you can still be very successful in recruiting as a young chapter. Like Hayden knows the story. Like there was one point at Boise State, my chapter, where the only two DU men on campus were myself and my buddy Mark. And we went out there and just talked to guys about what we wanted to do and what the chapter could be, and we're quite successful with that.
Yeah. Yeah, Jason, I think, yeah, I love that and I appreciate you saying that. I think too for our younger groups or newer groups, maybe some groups that haven't seen, recent success that maybe you wanted to, or maybe even compared to your campus. I think what Chase says is completely, um, accurate and something that you all should really think about is like, how are we telling our story? How are we allowing for folks to see our vision here on campus? But I also think a lot of what we talked about tonight, and obviously through all of Amplify, is something that you all really just need to take and really kind of prioritize when it comes to executing a lot of these things, right? Some of our newer groups, smaller groups, groups that just haven't seen as much success, sometimes just don't have the luxury to not execute at the level and not take these things, right? And what I will also tell you is our high performing recruitment groups, the groups that are doing it year in and year out, they've had to take these steps, and a lot of them do take these steps to execute at a high level. They are consistent, they are changing things, they are meeting, they are talking to their alumni and advisors. They're celebrating those wins. They're talking about the areas of improvement. They're remembering that last year was last year, and just because we recruited, and I'll use Purdue for the example, just because they're on my mind. Just because we recruited 82 guys one year doesn't mean that we can't go recruit. We're not necessarily maybe going to recruit 82 again, and that's because there's a lot of conversations there that we had with them and that they had internally. But that doesn't mean that we're just going to go recruit 20 guys the next year. We're going to go recruit 60 guys the next year, but we also have to execute at a high level again, right? And so I think for those newer groups, and maybe some of those groups that are saying, "Man, I want to change the way that my chapter recruits because it just hasn't been to the level that we know it can be." Listen and take that advice from Chase, but also know like, hey, really hone in on that execution piece because, like we said at the beginning, if we're just talking about it, and there's a lot of groups that hey, we talk about it, um, that's just all talk if we don't go out and execute at the level that we need to. And I think Chase had put in there, if you want to talk to somebody about executing, right, or you want to talk about what does that look like for my chapter, please, please, please reach out to one of us and let's talk about what that looks like for you all. Cool. Any other questions? All right. So, seeing or hearing none, obviously you can always shoot me an email, shoot me a text. But one last reminder that chapter recruitment plans are due this Sunday, August 9th. So thank you for a handful of groups that have already submitted those to me. If you don't, just so you all know, you might be receiving some follow-up, just kind of reminders from a member of the growth team later this week and into the weekend, just reminding you, hey, the recruitment plans are due. If you are needing the recruitment template, that was sent to VPs of recruitment, chapter presidents, and advisors back with your IHQ recruitment goals and your membership health reports. And so if you are needing that, and it's been sent a couple times since then, please shoot us an email and we'll get that over to you. So you have to use that template. What we then will do as a growth team is we review every single recruitment plan. We will make notes on certain things that we'll follow up with, and certain the chapters I've already submitted know, hey, we might have some clarifying questions on some things because we want to make sure we are helping you refine that to the level where it's going to allow for you to be the most successful. And then we will keep that on file and continue to follow up with groups to make sure that they are executing at the level. We'll follow along. Your chapter liaison will have that. So we are not just asking you to do it for the busy work. We're asking you to do it so that we can be a resource for you. We'll make sure that that's shared with chapter with alumni and advisors who are actively involved with the chapter. Make sure that's shared with your recruitment team, your executive board. Make sure that that's part of the recruitment training session. So all of those things are important. So please make sure to get those in by Sunday. If not, you'll get messages starting on Monday. Hey, where's your recruitment plan? We need to make sure those are in. And so make sure that you're sitting down and you're taking the time to get through that. If the recruitment plan, to be completely honest, is like 50% done, we're going to make sure we're going to follow up and say, hey, we need to make sure that this gets completed. And here are the things that are missing. Again, it's not just busy work. It's not just because we're like, hey, let's just check a box. It is really for our team to make sure that we are doing our job and in fulfilling our responsibility and helping you all be successful in recruitment this upcoming year. And then big thank you to all of you. Always enjoy doing Amplify. Started this back in 2021. And so being able to do this now for organizationally a fifth year is always great and always fun. Really appreciate the participation, the questions that we get, and just your all's attentiveness. And then it's always nice when LI kind of falls right in the middle of it. So we get to have some in-person human interaction and then finish us off. So I'm incredibly excited. I know my team's incredibly excited. I know staff is incredibly excited for this upcoming year. We're excited to grow. We're excited to see what chapters do. We're excited to challenge you as chapter members and chapter leaders. We're excited to put that pressure on a little bit, but the healthy pressure, and make sure that you are excelling at a level and allowing for DU, in our opinion, the best fraternity there is, to continue to grow. And so thank you for your participation in Amplify. Thank you in advance for the work that you're going to do for your chapters to bring in new members on your campuses this upcoming year. And like always, if you have questions, comments, concerns, or want to talk through anything, feel free to shoot me an email, feel free to shoot me a text, and we'll make sure to get connected. So thank you all again. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evening, the rest of your week, and excited for the upcoming year when it comes to recruitment.